Welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening in the Marvel and DC universes? Did finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything happening there, and then realizing that we're only talking about the comics universes, not the cinematic ones, and all these different universes with their own multiversal crises have gotten a little bit out of hand? Well, don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, the men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are really leaving out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little bit more than you did and can up your nerd cred. I'm your casual nerd host, CiCi. I do not know why people think that Pride Month ends in June, because otherwise we go into Wrath Month in July. So I'm going to keep Pride Month going. You don't have to. And we'll see what happens. But you can also see, by the way, that I am the main host for today. It's just me. But I want to make sure that just because we are clarifying this week's format doesn't mean that we're skipping out on the format altogether, right? Of course, right. So, podcast listeners, what are we nerding out about this week? Just a reminder, you can nerd out about all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be just like heroes and villains, right? Like, I am always amused at the actress Michelle Williams and the actress Michelle Williams, both of them having like all this delight whenever they're making the same name jokes. And also, if you're not sure which is which, one is black, one is white, you got this? Okay, good. Side note, if Dawson is no longer with us, who has inherited the creek while we're talking about it? And you should put the music library on shuffle, because you're going to find something that you love out of nowhere. It's really crazy. So what am I nerding out about this week? It actually feels a little teeny tiny bit silly, but I am a huge fan of disposable fountain pens. Okay. Just in general, like fountain pens feel really nice to write with, and the disposable means that I don't have to worry about trying to put ink into things and spilling all over myself, because I don't have the coordination for that kind of thing to be like very precise with it. Like I don't know if I have the funnel kind of capacity for that. But I can sit here and write all kinds of things with my little purple pen. See, I'm very fancy. But also the fact that they're disposable also means that you can kind of learn how to write properly with a fountain pen. So by the time you get to the point that you have decided that you want something a little bit fancier than that, then, you can go in there and feel fairly confident with it. To a certain extent, I've been really enjoying handwriting more recently. There's a certain amount of the aggressive AIing of the entire world that we have that is really making handwriting things nice. I'm writing, a few thoughts down that I have and how I want to proceed with like the pod and stuff like that. And it feels really nice to have what it is that I am saying written out in front of me. It is annoying though, because then I have to try to figure out how to digitize it, because the most annoying thing about handwriting things that you can't really like copy and paste things with that. So it's really interesting trying to sit there and walk that line of how I want to do it. But it's really nice to be able to sit there and just handwrite things. And if I'm going to really truly blow your mind, then I'm going to go ahead and do it with this. I will still handwrite things in cursive just for the practice, because I think that kind of thing is fun. And also because apparently people are forgetting how to write in cursive. So apparently you could start like sending secret messages to people if you write in cursive. I'm a little concerned, but that's neither here nor there. I am actually going to sit there and go and write a couple of notes in cursive for myself real fast, and we'll be back to up your nerd cred. Welcome back. So I've been doing some thinking about like the various tropes that we were talking about, right? As you can tell, we've been going through the ones that we talked about at the season opener. And I think that the one that really does not get the respect that it should is heart. Okay. And when I say it doesn't get the respect that it should, literally, if you go on the TV tropes and you are looking for stuff about the heart, there will be a whole page. What kind of lame power is heart anyway, right? It gets disrespected a lot. There's a certain amount of glass cannon element that it has in that, the heart is very fragile. They're not really necessarily going to be the biggest one on the team. They're not necessarily going to be the fastest one on the team. They're not necessarily going to be the smartest one on the team. And sometimes, they can end up being a little bit like patted on the head and yes, it's lovely to see you there. It's so good. But let other people do the actual work of everything. That is that is a very, very strong misunderstanding of what is actually the most useful part of having this person there. And let me put it to you this way. If there is, say, an organ, right, that makes sure that everything in your body moves the way that it's supposed to, that makes sure that you are able to receive all of the various like nutrients and expel all the waste and all of that. Yeah, your heart, if it is not beating, you're not really doing much of anything. Yes, hearts are squishy. Hearts are very vulnerable. It does not mean that it is weak. All right. The heart is actually a muscle and people don't really put enough respect on it. Okay. Again, you don't necessarily have to be the fastest or the strongest or the smartest to be important and useful in a team. And I think that the heart as a whole is misunderstood and left behind. And if you're going to blow off having a heart, then you're going to be in a problem because one of the things that they do, the main thing that they do is they actually keep all of the different parts and systems and organs connected to each other, right? They're keeping them connected to the mission. They're keeping them connected to humanity. They're keeping them connected to, themselves. Like you can have all of the power and strategy and weapons and whatever else that you want. But if you don't have empathy, if you don't have the ability to care about how somebody else is being harmed, you might end up actually getting the presidency in 2 non-consecutive terms, but that's neither here nor there. You, generally speaking, are going to be doing a whole bunch of things that are really, really bad for the people around you because you don't have any kind of concern or care about people around you. The heart matters, okay? So let's talk about who it is that we're saying that the heart matters and why it is that I'm kind of so insistent on this, right? So let's talk about Mati, right? Now, if you are old enough to have watched Captain Planet from back in the day, one, I'm very proud of you for staying up late. Two, make sure you stretch before you try and go and let Cash Money take over for the 9-9. And three, Mati is actually a Planeteer from Captain Planet and the Planeteers. It was created by Barbara Pyle and Ted Turner and premiered September 15th, 1990 with the episode A Hero for Earth. Now, I will note that one of the things that's really fun and exciting to think about is the fact that they did a lot of time and effort into trying to make sure that we are more eco-friendly, that we're aware of the things that are going on. Looting and polluting is not the way, right? We have the entirety of Captain Planet trying to get us to be better about taking care of things. And it's interesting how the old guard is struggling. So a hero for Earth. So during that time frame, basically we have Gaia, as voiced by Whoopi Goldberg, BT Dubs. But Gaia, like the spirit of the Earth, is actually like basically giving out the main elements to Planeteers from different locations, right? So Kwame from Africa gets Earth, right? Wheeler from the U.S. gets fire, which is probably a questionable idea, but that's neither here nor there. Linka from the USSR receives wind. Guy from, I want to say like the somewhere in Asia receives water, and Mati from South America receives heart. And like you've got like your 4 elements, earth, fire, wind, and water. And heart is actually really important to bring it all together, right? Without a heart to guide them, the other powers are useless. Like honestly, Gaia very specifically says that the other powers are useless, right? But I don't think that people realize how much having a heart, like the heart power actually mattered, right? Because yeah, Kwame could sit there and do all kinds of earth things or whatever, right? He could sit there and earth bend. Everybody could do all kind of bending and everything. But Mati could talk to animals and humans telepathically. Mati had a whole monkey companion who is just like hanging out with him and backing him up, really helping us see how much that power is based on like being connected to other living things and not just, being able to punch other living things, right? And also one of the things that's really like cool about Mati is the fact that as the youngest, he's the smallest. He's not necessarily going to be the one who's going and punching because he's the smallest Planeteer, he's the youngest Planeteer, his power is heart. And so again, that's part of why people are just like, oh my God, heart is such a lame power. But if you have the ability to sit there and get information, emotional insight, connection, and other things that just like having sheer elemental powers, like, that's kind of a useful thing. Put it to you this way. If you play D&D, there's a reason why a lot of successful parties have a bard, and it's not just because they are inspiring, and it's not just because they're hitting inspire courage at the beginning of a fight. Okay. So, but yes, Captain Planet as a whole, very environmental show. We're very like, eco-friendly. This is where like you're pledging not to use plastic straws, and like where all the millennials got really, really concerned about making sure that we were cutting up our six-pack rings so that we're not hurting the turtles, right? And having a heart is the reason why the Planeteers are able to really summon Captain Planet, who's able to overcome like the various things that the various looters and polluters and things are doing, right? It is the reason that we care about ecology is because we actually care about ourselves and the people around us. Heart is required for any kind of ecology thing. Therefore, Mati is the most important one of the Planeteers. All right, maybe I'm doing too much about Mati. That's fine. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about my favorite girly ever. You know who it is that we're talking about now at this point. We're talking about Sailor Moon, okay? Usagi Tsukino, okay? As, of course, created by Naoko Takeuchi, right? Her manga, like the manga actually began serialization in Nakayoshi magazine in like Gen 1, and Usagi has been like one of the main reasons that like we have magical girls as like such a huge force within like the Americas overall, right? But Usagi, right? Guardian of love and justice, all right? She is all about empathy. She's all about feelings, okay? Her birthday is June 30th, by the way. So she's a Cancer. She's all about feelings and homes and taking care of and protecting the people around her, right? But part of the thing that's important is that having all of this care, all of this compassion, it's not something that is like set up as a hindrance to her. It is the central focus of her power. It is where all of her power comes from. She is able to, in many ways, take the emotional power that she has, her emotional goodness, her love, her compassion, her desire to do good for others. When she uses the silver crystal or the Ginzushu, I am going to call it the silver crystal because I do not speak Japanese like that, right? But that's how she's using all of her power to a certain extent. Whenever she's doing any of her major things, but she's using her crescent wand, the silver crystal is on there. Whenever she's like sitting there and like defeating like the big bad of the season, she usually has a variation of the, silver crystal that is basically powering her feelings, her emotions into defeating whoever it is. The ability to be tactical is useful. The ability to deal with conflict as it comes up, very useful. The ability to plan ahead, have, any kind of responsibility for things, very useful. And turns out actually that having somebody who is kind of emotional and wants to make sure that everybody around her is, in a solid place mentally, physically, spiritually, however else, right? But she's also what keeps the team from becoming just a whole lot of soldiers who are trying to follow orders, and keeps them as a team, keeps them as a family, right? Like Sailor Moon as a whole, and like the Moon Kingdom as a whole, like if you want to sit there and like, really broaden it out, like its focuses on like love, friendship, healing, sacrifice. Like all of these things are like very important to being able to maintain peace throughout things, and also just in general to be generally very specifically good. Usagi is able to take the time to try to see the good in people. And some of that is because, like the monster of the week is like Amy's boyfriend of 2.5 seconds, and who she will then promptly break up with, but that's neither here nor there. But there's a lot of stuff that she is able to do beyond just like having good feelings and making people on the team better. Or again, like I want to highlight the fact that if you get into the mangas, right, her emotional power, her emotional purity, her emotional goodness, it's part of the reason that her power is something that like she's able to actually reset the universe like constantly against like the kind of universe desetting from chaos. And she and chaos have this fight for 1,000 years straight, okay? Yeah, a heart may be soft and squishy, right? A heart may be a glass cannon. A heart may not have like a lot of capacity to like really do a lot. But here's the thing. What the heart does do is one of the most powerful forces that we have in life, right? When Usagi is out here using her heart power, using the love and emotion and empathy that she feels for other people, and it is able to get channeled out, and villains are trying to sit there and continue to be villainous. Unfortunately, they end up all purified and good and not naughty anymore, not evil anymore, or something. Her ability to purify people through her love and goodness is honestly, it's really a recurring theme throughout the entire series, like even like the four sisters that she deals with, right? Each of them gets purified in their turn. Usagi is able to heal the carriers of like the rainbow crystals. Usagi is able to heal various monsters because she is so full of love and a desire for everyone around her to be healthy and safe. If you don't have a heart, you are not going to be able to really do much of anything as a whole. But the heart, Usagi makes it clear that hearts, while they are soft, while they are squishy, while they do require protection, they are also one of the most powerful forces that we have available to us. And when love and protection and how those feelings really show up for us, when they're actually treated as a source of power instead of decorative traits, things work out fairly well. I'm not going to say anything about how Amelia's character in Interstellar wanted to go to the planet where the person that she loved was, but if they had actually followed that force instead of some of the other logical ones, maybe they would have been in a different place at the end of the movie. But you know what? That's okay. We got to sit there and get into the whole like Tesseract of thing, and I I will absolutely wax poetic about tesseracts in 5D dimensions. So what we're going to do instead of talking about that is we're going to talk about how having a heart is important, but you cannot just dump on the heart. The heart is not an emotional dumping ground, and you have to make sure that you are protecting it. Otherwise, it'll become a problem for you as well, right? So let's talk about Steven Universe, okay? Who is the title character of the show, Steven Universe, right? As created by Rebecca Sugar for Cartoon Network. The actual series itself, premiered in 2013, and then we have Steven Universe the movie, Steven Universe Future. And so if you are still behind on the lore of Steven Universe, I'm super sorry, but I'm definitely about to spoil a bunch of it for you, right? So Steven himself is the son of Greg Universe and Rose Quartz, or Pink Diamond, however you feel like calling her, right? So he has an incredible amount of power as a human Jinn hybrid. And realistically speaking, there's a large part of the fact that Pink Diamond is his mother is the fact that he's able to do a lot of the stuff that he is, right? He's incredibly powerful. He's like the youngest member of the Crystal Gems, and by that I mean he's only been around for 11, 12 years, as the series opens, whereas the gems themselves have been around for several thousand years. We're not talking about Spinel. Okay, we're not talking about Spinel because I'm not going to cry right now. But, Steven's sitting there taking over a lot of what his mom had been to the gyms in different ways. Like whenever it is that he's actually grown enough to go and live with them, right? He is all heart. He is very protection focused with all of his powers, right? He's got his shield. He's got his bubbles. He heals. He can fuse with other humans. And, he's able to connect with just about everybody, okay? He gets Lars to do all kinds of fun and exciting things. And Lars and Lion's connection still, I don't entirely understand it, but that's just, magic is very cool. But Steven works to basically bridge gaps between a whole lot of different groups, and he spends a lot of emotional energy trying to get everybody to understand each other, trying to get everybody to work together, trying to decrease violence with things, right? So Steven is the bridge between the general humans and gems, right? Beach City has a whole lot of people who would have no idea what's going on with all of these gem battles and such. And Steven sometimes is able to sit there and be like, hey, this was a gem thing. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Or, hey, I don't actually know what this is. This is something that's like, pretty big. We should be aware of this. Or, like, hey, I know what this is. It is pretty big. You guys need to get out, right? So each city has like the bridge in the form of Steven. You have like the crystal gems in Homeworld, right? Like, especially the fact that if you consider how making friends with Lapis Lazuli is the reason that Steven was able to get the warning at all that Homeworld was coming back for them, right? Think about how he really kicked off Era 3 by sitting there being like, hey, I know that you guys have been doing things X, Y, and Z way, but we're not doing that anymore, right? And he's just sitting there working with all of these different groups, all of these different levels, and he's doing all of this as a little kid, right? Like, he is a small child while he's doing this, okay? His voice hasn't really dropped much in most of the show, except for like, the Too Many Birthdays episode, but we're not going to go into that. Although it was actually really nice when in Steven Universe Future, he was actually able to have the lower voice because Zach Callison had definitely been doing the higher one for a while. Anyway, not important. But like, it is because Steven is able to help everybody else kind of manage their emotions that the story is able to really progress, right? Pearl had no capacity to function without Pink Diamond. Garnet was kind of unsure of what to do with things until like she had some like good future vision via Sapphire and like some go-getterness because of like Ruby, but she needed somebody to kind of give directions because Cotton Candy Garnet didn't know anything about anything. And, Amethyst, who, by the way, is one of my favorites. I don't know if it is clear to you that I like the color purple, but purple as a color scheme is pretty much my favorite. So, like, huge shock and surprise. Anyway, Steven being there to be the emotional heart of the gyms, help them connect to humanity, make sure that they are still committed to protecting the earth. It's really a truly beautiful thing, but here's the thing. There's a lot of trauma that Steven really lived through, that Steven got dumped on him, that Steven was made to be responsible for. And again, he's a small child throughout this. Well, he's a teenager throughout a lot of the series, right? So you can't just sit there and dump and dump and dump and dump and dump onto the heart. Eventually, the heart's going to hit a point where it is not really vulnerable anymore because of all of the scar tissue that's developed, and then it becomes a real problem. And by that, I mean, in Steven Universe Future, all of the trauma that Steven has experienced over the course of time really builds up into a situation in which he becomes a monster. He becomes a lot of what it is that he had been fighting against in the entire series, a gem monster. And as a diamond gem monster, defeating him was not going to be, super duper easy, but they were really able to do it by getting the heart to come back online. So you got to get your heart back online. However, if for whatever reason you don't want to get your heart back online, sometimes you can use that as a rallying call for revenge or avenging somebody. Okay, look, I'm talking about Phil Coulson, right? In the MCU, he's like, he's played by Clark Gregg. He was really created for Iron Man in 2008, right? And he is in so many Marvel Cinematic Universes. Honestly, I think the only person who has more like MCU appearances is Stan Lee, okay? But he's there across like, a bunch of different films. He's there like, across a bunch of different agents. Like he is like, the SHIELD agent, and he kind of brings a lot of our people together. But the first time that we're really seeing Coulson like as a heart, as like, something more than just kind of like a bureaucrat is when he has a very, very big boo-boo in the Avengers movie, right? I'm going to call it that. He has a very, very big boo-boo. But when Tony and Steve and Thor and Bruce and Natasha and Clint all have Coulson's death, like, kind of like on their own hearts, they were able to really rally together and have the shared emotional stake, in part because they have, general strategy and general needs to like, protect the earth overall, but also they have this loss, right? Like they are the Avengers in part because, they need to avenge Coulson's loss. Now, Are they also the Avengers because of the whole part where Captain Marvel was called Avenger in her movie, and then Nick Fury decided to call it the Avengers Initiative because of that? That's neither here nor there. What matters is that Coulson's death was really important, okay? Like, the heroes needed to have a reason to do something other than just like be a bunch of individuals who are working in the same general location, right? Like, he's sitting there like, again, in the Avengers movie, he's sitting there being a full fanboy for Captain America and trying to, like, get trading cards signed and everything. But I mean, like, Coulson isn't just, he isn't just there to be killed, right? Now, I will note that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is technically not canon, right? But it's really important to also see Coulson within that as a conceit. Why is in the MCU he stays as the heart, because he's bringing together this team of people who in most cases would have no business being together, but he's able to sit there and build their loyalty. He's able to protect them, and he keeps really as moral a center as he can within like the whole Shield organization, despite the fact that, Hydra keeps running its behind on in, left, right, and center, right? So again, you don't have to be the strongest, okay? You honestly, in many cases, again, I refer to the heart as being a glass cannon. I'm going to note the fact that in many ways, like, you are going to be very weak as the heart. And you are also important to getting everybody to stand together and combine their powers and actually do something useful, right? So here, let me give you a different organization to sit there and think about like how the heart is useful, right? Think about the Justice League. So for the Flash, right? Think about the Justice Lord timeline from the DC animated universe. Lex Luthor kills the Flash, and Superman responds by killing Luthor. And then the Justice Lords become authoritarian rulers. Why did they become authoritarian rulers? Because they didn't have a heart anymore. They didn't have the comic relief. They didn't have somebody who is bringing the warmth and the humor, right? They're not having the emotional strength that they had before because the heart, the person who urged them to be better, is gone, losing that connection to being warm, being restrained, knowing who it is that you are fighting for and not just the pursuit of straight raw power. It's hard to maintain an actual organization that works for the good of other people if you don't have that. Like, yes, the League can absolutely win fights without him, right? But what happens if you don't have a moral center? Kind of turns into like a whole domination thing and just like a problem. You need to have a heart. You need to have a reason to care about the people around you. And one of the most plan ahead things that Batman has done is added Green Arrow to the Justice League. And now, look, we can all make all kinds of jokes about how Batman plans for everything, okay? He is absolutely 100% a super plan ahead. That man has plans on plans on plans. But it's important to listen to why he made a point of putting Green Arrow onto the team. He says that Green Arrow is going to essentially be somebody that will keep them honest, right? Like, the Justice League is incredibly powerful. It has so much ability to punch things. It has so much ability to think through things. It has so much ability to just be all of these things. And the Green Arrow's purpose is to make sure that all of the things that they could be are still within the original mission statement of the Justice League of being there to help other people. Because again, like all of that absolute power kind of situation, it is corrupting. And one of the things that I actually really like about Green Arrow as a heart is your boy is a lancer in his heart, like, activities. Cussing people out to get them to understand what it is they're doing to hurt other people. Cussing people out, like challenging them, telling them that they are wrong, making sure that they are aware that other people matter. It really keeps the team from just like coming to a point where they just like kind of stop thinking about the people they're supposed to be protecting. They stop worrying about people they're supposed to be protecting. Once it is that they don't know what it is that they are needing, what it is they're looking for, once it is that you decide that you are better than them, you stop being as willing to protect and take care of them. So, like, it's important. Like, you have a heart who's there for like warmth and humor. You can have a heart to make sure that you are still remembering who it is that you're fighting for. But ultimately, like, you need to have the heart to make sure that nobody goes crazy and kills everybody, right? Like, let's let's again think about like who all we have, right? We have Mati, who is the main reason why the Planeteers are able to actually form Captain Planet, because all of the elemental powers without, the heart are just elemental powers. Sailor Moon goes beyond like all of the elements and whatever else powers, and she just focuses on love and goodness. And she's doing this mess on a cosmic scale. Again, the entirety of creation gets deleted and reinstated while she's battling Cosmos. Okay. Also, read the manga. Seriously. Steven Universe, right, is also definitely a huge reminder that the heart needs support and you can't just emotionally dump on it. Please send the heart to therapy. And also, Steven, I know you have all of these healing powers, but once Connie's mom showed you all of them breaks that you had, all those fusions that you had, you probably should take a few days off to like deal with that anyway, right? And speaking of a whole lot of injuries, Coulson, again, getting that very, very big boo-boo because again, that man can't, I don't know if Coulson can like stay dead long term, honestly. Like, I don't think so. But having Coulson as a heart character is very useful for team uniting and like just, team growth and making sure that the team keeps going, even in the face of all kinds of all uncertain odds. Flash is there to make sure that we all like the heart can be there to keep the team from becoming dangerous, but the heart doesn't have to be nice about being a glass cannon because cannons still throw cannonballs, even if they're made of glass. Even if it really hurts the glass cannon, if they go on the offensive against you, you are not going to have an easy time of it. All right. So, there's a lot that the team can do without the heart, but not being able to have one is going to be not having a heart might mean that at the end of their battles, they might not actually still be heroes. Yikes. So we're going to take a quick break while I contemplate the way that folks can break bad, and we'll be back for our thrilling conclusion. Welcome back to our thrilling conclusion. So I've already said that like the heart is important to a lot of groups, right? And I want to both shout out and also shake my head at Joss Whedon, before he was revealed as being the legacy destroyer that he chose to be, had written a lot of really great hearts in his groups. Xander was literally the heart whenever they had to do all of like the spell of joining the Scoobies together. Kaylee is absolutely the heart of the whole Firefly Serenity thing. Like, and realistically speaking, Sierra was also very much serving the heart role whenever she was Sierra on Doll House. We're not going to talk about when she was not given the opportunity to be Sierra, but that's neither here nor there. Before Joss kind of like, really ruined his legacy, he made a point of installing a heart character onto all of the teams. And it's really important in recognizing that because we have somebody who's able to sit there and be kind of vulnerable, to be somebody that the team wants to protect, to be available to remind the team what it is that they are fighting for is honestly probably one of the most useful tools ever. Because again, brains without enrichment sit there and like tear up the couch. You have a Lancer with no one to follow. They might try and take over or they might just sit there and wander off, but hearts are important. So there's my thoughts on that. So moving on, we've already talked about how last year we did all of the calendar stuff and how this year we're going to be focusing on the segment that I call You've Got Issues, right? Blah, blah, blah. We did stuff last year. We're doing stuff this year. So Kingdom Come. I think this should be on your shelf. Okay. Mark Waid, Alex Ross. It's good stuff. Now, here's what I'm going to say about this. You remember in the previous episode about the brain where I sat there and got really, really mad because Lex Luthor could be sitting there doing all kinds of things to obviate the need for Superman. He could sit there and build all these different defenses in case like something happens. He could sit there and build something to make sure that people are still safe and taken care of. He could build all kinds of things so that we don't have to worry about Superman, and he doesn't. So in Kingdom Come, in the little series here, which by the way, the art for it is beautiful. I don't know if you can see like the whole thing, but like if you get the book, you can see like this whole huge splash. It's beautiful. But Lois Lane has been killed and Superman is withdrawing after there's another hero who kills the Joker, and people are on board with the premise of, superheroes actually killing. And so, in many ways, superheroes like kind of withdraw, disappear, and we end up with a kind of Watchmen-esque universe where heroes become kind of public figures, but not in the trying to do better kind of way, more like they're monetized kind of way. And eventually this gets back to Superman. So we're talking about like the earlier age of comics where everybody is having a lot of feelings about doing good, being better for everybody versus the kind of very gritty era of supers trying to process the way that like the world of comics has gotten a lot more gritty. I am not going to say that this issue is suggesting that Lex was right so much as I think that like Lex could do so much better for himself and the world if he wasn't so damn focused on trying to fight Superman, because he could have actually built a world where Superman didn't need to come back. And Superman coming back without Lois Lane, aka his heart, means that he tended to be more on the fascist side of things than the truth, justice, and the American way kind of things. He became a lot more dictatorial about things because he didn't have a heart to really kind of make him, I would say, like, be a human, but, Superman can't really be a human. He's Kryptonian. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? I'm just saying you should consider getting Kingdom Come if you have an option. So, yeah, you've got issues. Yay! So, listeners, we've come to the end of our podcast. I know. How is it over so soon? Well, good news. Our next episode is coming out sooner than you think. You're also, of course, more than welcome to listen to this episode again if that's not fast enough. Nerd cred takes time to build, but if you can make sure that your heart actually has a lot of squishies and stuffies and things around them, you probably will be much safer than if you actually let them get mad enough to explode. And now it's time to mention that we have an Instagram. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We're working on expanding our reach. If you like the episode, of course, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, all of the things that you're supposed to do, right? Please give us a few questions, suggestions. We want to answer your thoughts. Also, follow us across platforms, right? So you can follow us on Instagram at Up Your Nerd Cred Pod. If you're looking for me across platforms, I'm at Ciracy Davis, CIRACDAVIS. My co-host is at AMDazArt, AMDIAZART. Please make sure you show him the good fan art or the good cosplay, however you feel like doing it. So, while you are going ahead and listening to the podcast, you should definitely make sure to get your friends to like and subscribe as well, and your family members and any coworkers that you trust not to be weird about listening to the same podcast as you. And it's kind of warm. Maybe tell the HVAC person. Who knows? Good night, everybody.